He was this big, tall, gorgeous black queen who was, outrageous and a big mouth.
I see myself in the White House, baby.
I have never met anyone in my life that is as driven as RuPaul.
It was so clear this guy was a star.
RuPaul's larger than life. He presented himself in a very non-threatening, non-sexual way.
And this is the bag. Ow!
You're not supposed to be gay in a dress, black and famous, and he's done all of that.
San Diego, California is a coastal city with beautiful beaches and a sailboat-filled harbor. But in the 1960s, it was also a segregated town, where black people lived in the poor areas and struggled to get by. It was here that RuPaul Charles was born on November 17, 1960. Even at his birth, his mother is said to have known that her son would someday be famous.
When he was born, my mother invited her sisters to come down to meet Ru, and after a while, my aunt's like, well, Tony, my mother, what's the boy's name? His name is RuPaul, and he's going to be a star.
RuPaul was the third child of 4 and the only boy. His father, Irving, worked as an electrician and was known for his charm. His mother, Ernestine, was a fiery woman of Creole descent. In the neighborhood, she was called Mean Miss Charles for her hot temper.
So I was out on the porch one day, and she stuck her head out the window, and she just says, Ru, who's this? I was like, oh my God, this is Ru's mom.
Oh, Miss Charles. She was a mess. I have yet to come across a personality like that. Never seen anything quite like it. Said what she felt, meant what she said, and you deal with it.
Miss Charles was also legendary for her wardrobe. She had a sense of style that her son would eventually emulate.
I have yet to meet anyone as well-dressed as her. And I think some of Ru's flamboyant personality and attitudes come from her.
The Charleses lived in a tract house in a neighborhood that was very poor. Getting by was a constant struggle. The family used unconventional means to put food on the table.
One way of coming up with some money is to go down and donate blood or plasma, to go out and eat for the day for lunch, as he called it. They used to give us like $8 a piece to do so.
We used to get government food. You can stand in line and get free cheese, powdered milk, and the kids in our neighborhood would razz us because we come home with these big old government boxes.
Family life was rough for the Charles children. They watched their parents fight constantly and saw their mother live up to her tough reputation.
Their fights were famous. They'd come and they're fighting. Everybody come to see. My father loved convertible cars. She took gasoline, poured it all over the top of his convertible car, and lit a match and said, now, can we talk? Oh, he's like, oh, baby, 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 whatever you say, whatever you want. Oh, honey, baby, baby, baby. And here I am as a kid going, is this normal?
She could be really mean. I remember when I saw the movie Mommy Dearest, I was like, what's the big deal? I swear that's true.
To escape the reality of his home life, Ru took refuge in the world he saw on television. The pop stars of the day became his idols.
He had a very painful childhood, and that was how he went into another world other than his own. And so the kind of glamorous world of, Sonny and Cher more than Sonny, the Supremes, these were his sort of goddesses and icons.
Very vivid memories the first time I saw Diana Ross and the Supremes on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I remember I loved those girls so much, particularly the one in the middle who was just so exuberant and showing all of her teeth, and she scrunched her little shoulders up. She was so happy to be there. I just fell in love with her.
At the time, seeing a black person on television at all was a novelty.
In our neighborhood, people would scream out, you know, it's black people on TV. There's some black people on TV. So people would be shouting this across the street because it was such an event.
By the time he was 7, Ru's parents had divorced and his father moved out. This sent Ernestine into a deep depression.
So she saw a psychiatrist. He prescribed Valium, and there were days we didn't hear from her. She was like null and void.
While his sisters kept the house together, Ru concentrated on his mother. The seeds of his subsequent entertainment career were sown in trying to keep her happy.
So I would do impressions for her, impersonation. I would make her laugh, and you know, that was my role there.
By junior high, the flamboyant side of Ru was starting to peek through. Most boys were concentrating on sports. Ru was experimenting with different styles and fashions.
Ru had a massive afro that everyone had to put their hands in when they saw him, you know. It was just like dangling all over the place.
Growing up surrounded by women had a profound influence on Ru. Women were the center of attention in the Charles household, and men had secondary status.
The way you got attention was that you were a girl, or you did feminine kinds of things.
My mother was always trashing my father's existence, and so I grew up in this situation feeling like, yeah, okay, so men are this, but I'm a man, mama. You know, what about me? So I always had shame attached to anything that was masculine or that sort of pig-headed thing, that stereotype of what men do.
There were signs that there was something different about RuPaul from early on. Other kids called him a sissy.
There was one person across the street that, who said to Ru, "You, Ru, should be the girl, and you, Rozzy, should be the boy," because I was a total tomboy.
School was not RuPaul's strong suit. He bounced from one to another, sometimes barely attending a class. After flunking out of one high school, he was forced to try another, located in a neighborhood where his sister Renetta lived with her husband. So he moved in with them. When they decided to leave San Diego and move to Atlanta, Ru went along.
San Diego's a very conservative town, lots of military, and I don't feel he felt approved and wanted, and it was just a real tough time.
At the time, Atlanta was a hotspot for young black professionals. It also had a thriving art scene and gay community. RuPaul would soon find a place where he felt at home for the first time in his life. It was 1976 when RuPaul arrived in Atlanta, Georgia with his sister and her husband Lawrence. Atlanta was thriving, filled with young professionals. RuPaul immediately felt more at home here than he ever had in San Diego.
It was the first time I'd been around brown-skinned people, really a lot of brown-skinned people who were doing things. I remember seeing a billboard of Monica Kaufman and for Channel 2 News. You can't imagine what that felt like to see a black newscaster.
Soon after their arrival, RuPaul enrolled in a nearby high school that specialized in the performing arts. He took an acting class and started to perform in plays. The new environment allowed Ru to explore his artistic side and his sexuality.
There was a huge gay community in Atlanta, and I got to explore. I got to really be outside of my neighborhood in San Diego and be the person I always thought I was.
Ru would never graduate from Northside School of Performing Arts. A new job for Lawrence forced them to move to another part of town, but his interest in the arts remained. Eventually, he dropped out of high school altogether and started working for his brother-in-law at his car dealership. He was watching television during his time off one day when he came across an offbeat artsy variety show that would change his life.
There was a public access television show I saw called The American Music Show. And I felt like I discovered America. I was like, okay, this is where I belong. These people understand me. They were sarcastic. They were funny. So I wrote them a letter. And I said, I need to be on your show.
The regulars who ran the program quickly realized Ru was a natural fit with their offbeat crowd.
Never let us see you sweat. How's about Rico? All right.
One band who played frequently on the show, called the Now Explosion, asked him if he wanted to perform as part of their act.
He was nuts, and we were nuts, and so we were all drawn together. And in Atlanta is pretty conservative, and but we weren't, and we were having fun in downtown, and here comes Ru.
Ru joined a group of like-minded outsiders. It was the first time he had friends who were not only gay like him, but also outrageous. He started to perform regularly on the show, doing everything from singing to lip-syncing to dancing.
And every week on the show, RuPaul would teach a different dance, which he'd usually made up 5 minutes beforehand. I remember one of the dances was pee on the dog like a car. No, pee on the car like a dog, sorry.
Ru moved out of his sister's house and joined his new friends in the scene in downtown Atlanta. They were young, creative, and carefree, and lived a wild life.
We were doing drag in the daytime and hanging out and running around, and we would stay at people's houses. We would stay in people's cars and their vans.
It was a real scene. And at that time, REM and the B-52s had already become famous from that area of the country, and so everybody had stars in their eyes.
Ru formed his own band called RuPaul and the U-Hauls that would play on the cable show and in the clubs. He and his friends scraped together a living working odd jobs and performing wherever they could.
We were constantly scrambling for money. We would go out and go to the top of the Peachtree Plaza Hotel, and it's a round building, and one of you goes this way, the other one goes that way, and you look for room service food that's not finished, the people haven't finished eating.
We just lived in these flop houses, and we had junk cars. Like, we'd buy cars for $700 until they broke, and then we'd get another one. And we wore it around town, and we just played in bands and had a good time. Crazy, like young, colorful, wild, no rules.
It was during this period that Ru started experimenting with different looks, including drag. In those early days, his costumes were made from anything and everything.
He did this thing called terror drag, and he'd be, he had like a mohawk. He'd be wearing kind of half dresses with, military boots. It was part male, part female. It was just, and he'd walk down the street at 12 o'clock in the afternoon like that.
Ru used to make his own clothes all the time, and he would astound me with the incredible things he would come up with. He made one dress and earrings to match with the curtains in his brother-in-law's car dealership.
Their creative impulses were further enhanced by mind-expanding substances. Partying was an integral part of the culture.
There were a lot of drugs, but in my opinion, they were the good drugs. We never did heroin. We never did cocaine. We smoked pot, we drank alcohol, we took acid, we took mushrooms, just the fun things, the simple things.
Wearing outrageous outfits, Ru would perform in clubs. He was known for his inventive and outlandish ways of drawing attention to himself. He hadn't yet figured out what his act would be, but it was always clear to RuPaul that he would one day be a star. To achieve that end, he was a tireless and shameless self-promoter.
I have never met anyone in my life that is as driven as RuPaul. The first day I met him, we drank a whole bottle of Jack Daniels, and I was laying on the couch going, and Ru was like, let's go to Kinko's. Let's make posters of me. Let's go to the hardware store. Let's get some wallpaper paste. Let's go plastering pictures of me all over town.
It didn't take long before RuPaul became famous in Atlanta for being a colorful personality. His first two acts were punk rock bands, but neither lasted long. So Ru quickly drummed up new products. He wrote books about himself and sold them at the clubs and made films with friends.
We made these terror movies, Trilogy of Terror and Terror 3D, and there were 3 of those.
Who's doing this? Where did they come from?
6 foot challenging role to date.
Then we did a series of superhero movies, kind of spy, girl, hot model, and that was Rue was Star Booty.
Hello?
And he was always saving somebody or something.
I guess Star Booty is back in action.
But really it was just an excuse to change clothes, to wear new outfits every single scene. He would get in a car and show up somewhere else and get out of the car in a different outfit. And that was always fun.
From the start, RuPaul knew that in order to be a big star, you had to act like one, even if you hadn't really done anything. And it worked. In the early 80s, RuPaul and his crowd reigned over the club scene in Atlanta. But eventually, it was time to spread their wings. So, they went up to New York to perform at the Pyramid, a drag club in the East Village. Rue and his friends had such a good time, they decided to stay. But they soon discovered that making ends meet wasn't as easy in New York as it had been in Atlanta, and they found themselves homeless once again.
We slept in Central Park, we slept in Abingdon Square Park, we slept in Tompkins Square Park. We would sleep at people's houses. We would sleep at people's houses that wanted to sleep with me. We would sleep at people's houses that didn't want to sleep with me. We would sleep on roofs of buildings that we could just get into. You know, you go to a building, you ring all the buzzers at 4 in the morning, somebody lets you in.
Rue spent a few months living hand to mouth in New York. Eventually, he realized he wasn't ready yet to make it in the big city. So, he headed back to Atlanta. Back in his element, Rue's career started to finally gain momentum. He started recording music and was hired to play riffraff in a local theatrical production of the Rocky Horror Show that attracted the attention of the mainstream local press.
All the major newspapers wrote about me, and it was the thing that gave them an opportunity to say, okay, you've seen the posters, you've heard about him, you've probably seen him traipsing around Midtown. Well, he's in this thing, and that made me legitimate.
He ain't no damn good, honey.
Rue kept a foot in the nightclub scene, too, performing at clubs and dancing at weekends, a hotspot that attracted a mixed crowd, gay and straight, young and old. It exposed Rue to an audience that he hadn't previously had.
RuPaul go-go danced there like 5 nights a week on the main dance floor. After a while, like everyone in Atlanta was like, oh, RuPaul. I think that was the beginning of mainstream acceptance.
At weekends, Rue had a chance to put on his charm and connect with the audience.
It's not dancing, it's attitude dancing, and just, working people, and saying, come here, give me $1. And so why should I, and I'm being charged, why should I give you $1? It's because it's good luck, and because I'm sweet, and they'd say, all right, and give it to me. So, I'd make $60 a night, but I'd come home with like 120, because I've hustled everybody in the club.
After 2 more years of working the performing arts circuit, Rue had become about as famous as one could be in Atlanta. So he figured it was time to return to New York. It was the era when the club scene in Manhattan was at its height. This time, Rue's reputation in Atlanta paved the way for his entree into the scene.
You know, there was already a buzz, people talking about him in town. He was this big, tall, gorgeous black queen who was, outrageous and a big mouth.
Rue started working in the hip downtown nightclubs. With his outlandish acts, it didn't take long for him to get himself noticed.
I could not take my eyes off of him because he wasn't just a drag queen going for glamour. Oh no. It was an afro and every other color wig. Mini skirts that were so short, really short. Out of his mind. If anybody wanted to do anything, they'd call Rue with that big smile on his face. And I would just watch for hours thinking, oh my God, he's so weird.
Club promoters started hiring Rue to host theme nights, to act as MC, or to perform his own act. In a city full of drag queens all vying for attention, he managed to stand out.
He developed a following mostly because he was unusual. Most drag queens in New York City dressed like Diana Ross or Bette Midler or some famous person, and they lip sync their songs. RuPaul sang his own songs. He developed his own persona.
Ru also continued to experiment with different looks, always aspiring to look fabulous without having any money to spend.
Often it required finding a Fredericks of Hollywood vintage jumpsuit and cutting the legs off and creating tube dresses and making a little pair of hot pants for myself.
But periodic club jobs hardly paid the rent. It was once again a hand-to-mouth existence. Ru and his group of friends had to rely on each other to get by.
Well, tonight we're dating. I love everybody.
Ru would be out all night and sleeping during the day. He had to constantly promote himself as he had when he was just starting out in Atlanta.
You could often find yourself, in a stretch of 2 weeks with no income, which would mean pizza, and it would mean stealing. No, I'm kidding. It would mean, coming together as a group, like, oh, I'm cooking some pasta over here, come over.
Ru would be on 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? He always had like his makeup on and the boa or the extensions, and it was always going on. But especially in the early days when we were homeless, you didn't have time to be down. You had to be up, up, up. So you could try and, maybe I could stay at your house tonight.
It was so difficult. It was so difficult. I really had no place to stay. It was truly the darkest period of my life.
The constant demands of scraping together a living finally took its toll on Ru. Having to work so hard to get noticed left him exhausted and frustrated. So he packed his bags and headed to LA, hoping to have better luck in Tinseltown. It was 1988 when RuPaul moved to Los Angeles, hoping to get noticed. But LA proved to be even tougher for him. He camped out with his sister Rosie. Weeks turned into months as he tried unsuccessfully to be discovered. The only appearance he would get the whole time was on The Gong Show.
Well, I just love that heart on your face. So I gave you a 7.
And he didn't even win.
That's good, a 7, yeah.
He could not get arrested. I mean, nothing was happening for him. And finally, I'd gotten fed up because, he would come back home. It's like he'd be out all night, doing whatever he did. And then he'd come home and he'd sleep and, eat up all my food.
Didn't have a car. Had no money. Staying with my sister. She actually had enough of me and said, you need to leave. And she was actually right. And I went back down to my mom's house, spent Christmas. I quit smoking cigarettes and gained about 25 pounds, grew a beard for the first time in my life. And come January, Larry T., my old friend, called me and said, you need to get your ass back to New York and do this. And I said, you're right.
Ru headed back to New York with renewed resolve. This time, he was determined to become the fiercest drag queen in Manhattan. He decided to concentrate on his sexy queen look. His act, which was part musical and dance performance, part comedy, also included a message: to love yourself.
My name is RuPaul. Everybody say love. Everybody say love.
I think he believes that love is the most important and powerful thing, and it stays with us, long after we're gone, and it's the only thing that really matters. And I think that's a true belief of his, and it's really something that he wanted to share and spread.
It was a dark time in the gay world in New York. AIDS was decimating the community. Gay groups were feeling besieged. RuPaul was a decidedly upbeat antidote to the gloomy atmosphere.
He tapped into the part of American consciousness that said, enough already. We just wanna dance, we just wanna laugh. Look at that 7-foot drag queen, isn't he funny?
A lot of people in the gay movement were looking to let the rest of the world know, oh, we're just normal, we're just like you. And then along comes this 6-foot drag queen and says, child, I'm not like anybody. And that was really refreshing, I think, for everyone. He's a sort of epic humanist. And I think that's why he was able to kind of rise above it all.
The drag scene in New York was traditionally made up of celebrity impersonators with high camp attitudes. RuPaul, with his message of acceptance and love, stood out. In 1989, he was voted Queen of Manhattan, a title bestowed to the favorite drag queen of the city's club promoters and columnists. He also got a big break, a job as a dancer in a B-52's video that got him noticed and led to other mainstream jobs. Ru had reached the pinnacle of underground celebrity. Now he decided he wanted to go for it in the big leagues. But first, Ru needed to clean up his act. Being part of the club scene meant he had been caught up in the non-stop partying that went along with it.
There was drinking, and there were drugs everywhere. You know, some promoters would distribute ecstasy, or have an ecstasy punch, or it was just part of the time.
That period became really sloppy, and I could see at that point, I could see that in Ru's eyes that he was really unhappy, and that's when he started drinking heavily. And that period didn't really go on for that long, maybe a year. I think that RuPaul realized that he had to get serious or give up.
Ru enlisted the help of a management team to guide his career, and he decided to get sober. This meant distancing himself from the people and places that had made up his everyday life. He isolated himself from his friends and spent several months writing music.
He came in and played us some stuff and we were blown away. And literally, the record deal happened within weeks of us hearing that first demo. I mean, we sent it, the first record label we sent it to, they called us within days.
In 1992, Tommy Boy Records signed Ru to record an album. The last song for the record was called Supermodel, an upbeat, fun dance track. The song quickly gained momentum, which was greatly enhanced by the video. Ru's new, glamorous, blonde diva look was more fabulous woman than teasing drag queen. Beautiful and sexy without being sexual. It turned out to be the hit RuPaul had been waiting for.
Supermodel came out right at the time when America was becoming fascinated by supermodels and by the whole fashion scene. And his timing was excellent. He tapped into the person in middle America who stood in front of their mirror and tried to pile their hair up just like, Linda Evangelista.
Ru's career was further propelled by an appearance on the Arsenio Hall show. It was his first guest spot on a national show. He made sure that he got noticed.
It's true, I'm a regular Joe. I mean, I just have the unique ability to accessorize.
It was the combination of his performance and his couch talk with Arsenio. It was just so clearly that moment that RuPaul had arrived.
RuPaul managed to go where no other drag queen had been, the mainstream. Suddenly, he, she, and his videos were everywhere, and some of his old friends resented it.
Ru made it to the mainstream because he downplayed his sexuality a lot, and that caused a bit of a tiff from the other drag queens who he'd come up with in New York. They kind of labeled it as RuPaul goes to the mall. They were all angry that he wasn't, but I think that was necessary for him to kind of become a commercial entity.
The Supermodel CD was a big hit by dance music standards, but much to Ru's frustration, it failed to make the top 40.
The expectations were that Supermodel was going to be a #1 pop record, and it didn't. That didn't happen. What did happen was it got played on a lot of radio stations, it got played in every club in America, and it really did kind of spark everyone's interest in RuPaul. But no one really thought of him as a musical artist, even though that was his intention.
You're absolutely the best. Give yourselves a big round of applause.
Music artist or not, RuPaul had finally gotten noticed. The door to stardom had been opened, and in true RuPaul form, he would take full advantage. It was 1993 when RuPaul's Supermodel of the World CD propelled him into the spotlight.
I'll be signing your CDs after this, so I want to thank each of you for...
The album was a mix of funk and dance tracks, high camp, and satire.
This is a special shot going out to my mama, Miss Ernestine Charles.
One of the songs, Back to My Roots, was a salute to Ru's ethnic background and written as a tribute to his mother.
I love you, mama.
Including his mother in his work turned out to be a particularly poignant decision. By the time he was shooting the video, his mother was dying of cancer. When the video wrapped, Ru went to Washington to perform at a huge gay rights rally. Standing on the Mall, the same place where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had delivered his I Have a Dream speech, RuPaul was performing at the ultimate live concert, in front of millions of peers for a cause close to his heart. It was a moment of triumph. But the woman who had given him the strength to get there wouldn't live to see him perform. That same morning, his mother passed away.
I was happy and sad because I knew that she had been through so much pain. And I was happy for her. But at the same time, you see your mom, your mother.
Ru's consolation was the knowledge that his mother had lived long enough to see him succeed. Ru suffered another setback at the height of his supermodel success from an incident at the 1993 MTV Video Music Awards. Supermodel had been nominated for Best Dance Video. Ru was asked to be a presenter at the awards and was paired with the legendary comic and a man who'd often worn a dress on his own show, Milton Berle. But their meeting before the show didn't go so well.
Apparently, Milton Berle was giving him a hard time backstage. Ru let him have it on stage, and it was, one of the great awful moments in the RuPaul saga. He said to Milton Berle, well, you used to wear dresses, but now you wear diapers. And nobody took that very kindly. I mean, basically, Ru got booed, and I think it had somewhat of a negative impact on his career.
Suddenly, Ru's reputation as the Queen of Nice was in jeopardy. This fueled skeptics who had long questioned the sincerity of his message. Ru's music career wavered a bit in the aftermath of the Milton Berle incident. His next two albums failed to gain the momentum of Supermodel of the World and got mixed reviews. But he was still attractive to a wide variety of commercial suitors. Among them was MAC Cosmetics. They asked Ru to be their spokesperson in 1995.
What a better advertisement for makeup products to show the power of using makeup to transform oneself.
For years, makeup had been a favorite hobby of Ru's. When he hit it big with his supermodel persona, his makeup routine became serious work, a transformation that few are privy to.
It's sort of 3-hour ritual, and candles are lit, and perfume incense is going, and, Greek gods are singing.
Working with MAC gave RuPaul an enormous amount of exposure. It also provided him with a platform. He became the face of the Viva Glam campaign, dedicated to raising money to fight AIDS.
Viva Glam!
Ru was very much involved with many of the site selections in terms of the organizations that we help. He made countless visits and check presentations and speaking engagements on behalf of the fund all over the world.
It's good, you invite.
He was not just a face, but truly an active participant, and continues to be truly an active participant in what it is that we do.
With his face splashed on billboards for MAC and the success of Supermodel, RuPaul had become the star he had always wanted to be. He also found love. He met George, a handsome Australian artist who would be his boyfriend for 5.5 years. In 1996, Ru was tapped to do morning radio. WKTU in New York asked him to co-host a show with DJ Michel Visage. It was a chance to show off what he knew.
I honestly cannot tell you in words the incredible insanity of his brain storage for music. If I want to know anything, I call him. He tells me what label, what year,
who sang it. It's like weird. It's weird. It's not normal.
But not everyone thinks radio is the best place to showcase RuPaul.
I have, and it is a privilege and an honor to be here at the new KTU.
It's a stone gas.
It's a stone gas, honey.
The show was hugely popular for 2 years, but eventually lost steam. Ru started to do only occasional appearances, which he continues today.
RuPaul doing morning radio should have been inspired, and it was inspired for a while. I think RuPaul without the visual gets old after a while.
Live from the VH1 studios in New York City, it's the RuPaul Show.
Still, the folks at VH1 thought he was interesting enough to give him his own talk show. In 1996, the RuPaul Show debuted on VH1.
We got a rowdy crowd here, aren't they, Wild?
And soon after, his radio co-host Michelle Visage joined as his on-air sidekick.
Our VH1 show was like a variety show. It was like a modern-day Sonny and Cher.
Oh my God, that man-eating shark about to devour those 3 children?
No, duh. That really cute guy with that humongous package. What?
It was fun. It was way campy, way outlandish, and way before its time.
Hygiene is not very important to you, is it?
No, not at all.
We were more concerned about our outfits and our makeup more than anything else.
Child, have you ever been on a talk show?
Over the course of the 100 episodes of the show, Ru got to interview some of his childhood idols.
I enjoy...
Since he had studied them for decades, prepping for the show came easy.
Yes, I knew Moses. He had a water act.
He's a walking encyclopedia. He knows who played, bass on, on Patti LaBelle's second album.
Now, your show was a spinoff of All in the Family, and then Florida spin off with Good Times.
The VH1 show was very inside. You had to kind of know a bit about the industry. You had to be kind of a little more sophisticated than your basic television viewer to get it.
In addition to interviewing performers, Ru started to get acting offers himself. Over the course of the 90s, he was offered small movie roles. He appeared in Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, and as a counselor to Jan in the Brady Bunch movie.
Do something to make yourself stand out. Give you your own look, apart from your siblings.
A new look.
In spite of his movie roles, by the late 90s, RuPaul's star had begun to dim. It was time to unmask the drag queen that the world had come to know. He modeled for a Rockport advertisement as himself, and he decided to focus on acting. This would soon mean moving across the country back to the one place he had yet to conquer. In 1998, RuPaul was at a crossroads in his career. He was interested in pursuing acting now, and realized he needed to be closer to the heart of the industry. So he picked up and moved to Los Angeles.
There just came a time when he was much more interested in pursuing things other than the blonde wig.
To a public that had only known him in drag, it was hard to imagine that looking like a woman is not part of his everyday life.
No, he does not go around in 6-inch heels. He does not go around in miniskirts. He does not go around corseted up. He goes around in sweatpants and suits just like the rest of us.
He's quite the opposite of the character he portrays, really, in life. He's a sweet, nice, soft-spoken person.
After moving to L.A., Ru concentrated on getting acting roles. Critics gave him high marks for his performance in the 1999 TV movie, But I'm a Cheerleader. Ironically, Ru played a counselor at a camp where gay kids are sent by parents hoping to reprogram them to be straight.
I myself was once a gay. Now I'm an ex-gay, Megan. I work for a place called True Directions who help people like yourself.
Without the costumes that had come to define him, Ru started to reevaluate his career, and in the process, began to understand his motivation to perform.
I remember as a kid thinking I would step foot on stage and the whole world would say to me in unison, "We love you." And then I'd be healed. It'd be all done. Well, I know now that doesn't work. It doesn't fill the void. It has to come from inside out. I got your femme fatale,
Ru also started recording songs for an album of his own music for the first time in several years in the spring of 2001.
I got you. One question. Are you
Aware that he has to reinvent himself, Ru is searching for a new sound. Some critics question his long-term potential.
He hasn't found the right voice. I don't think that he believes he's a good singer. I think he wants to be a good singer, he wants to be a musical star, but there's something about him that's very shy about his singing voice.
Another second verse, sure.
He gets right to the edge, and then right when it comes time to kind of really belt and really take that risk, he steps back.
These days, RuPaul lives a relatively private and quiet life in LA. He doesn't drink and prefers to throw intimate parties at his house. During his spare time, Ru continues to be an active participant in fundraising, mainly for gay causes.
You better walk, baby.
His message is still effective, even without the spotlight he once had.
Everybody stay low.
I think RuPaul is trying to kind of gradually change people's consciousness. That there are a lot of young gay kids who are aware of RuPaul. He's trying to say to them, it's okay, look at me. I'm a 7-foot drag queen and I made it.
Through his success, RuPaul changed the public perception of drag. It was once considered taboo, even shameful. Ru convinced people that it is nothing more than showbiz.
I think everybody's in drag. You're born naked and the rest is drag. Any questions,
While RuPaul has expanded its repertoire beyond drag queen, he has no plans to give up the blonde wig altogether. It is a symbol of the freedom of expression that has defined RuPaul's whole life.
You're not supposed to be gay and famous, and you're not supposed to be gay in a dress, black and famous, and say you're gay and that you're a man in a dress. And he's done all of that, and he's just opened this door for us all to walk through, no matter what.